Have you ever wondered, like, is a 500,000 enough or maybe a million, 5 million? The reality of it is you've been working a long time to achieve your financial goal. And what's fascinating is that most people don't know that number. And the reason I know that is because they often ask that question. And the reality of it is, which you're not going to love the answer, is it depends, right? I'm going to show you a way today to really calculate what you need in retirement so that you're not guessing or you're not just hoping that it's the right number. And it can really help you create a plan that's going to work for you. I'm Annette Bao, founder of the Millionaire Insider, with more than 36 years experience helping individuals, retirees, and pre-retirees create a financially secure retirement they love. I've discovered something interesting. Oftentimes, what happens is people ask the wrong question. Instead of asking how much money I need, they should be asking how much income do I need? And are my assets positioned correctly? And what else should I be looking at? It's so interesting because so much of a person's success is really knowing the right question to ask. Whenever you hear an interview, the key really is, does that interviewee know the right next question? And if they do, it's a phenomenal interview. And if they don't, it's not, right? And I always look at that, especially when they're interviewing successful people. Like, we know the next best question. And that's what you got to do when it comes to your money. The issue is really determining what that enough means so you can stop guessing and you can really instead focus on living your life now, knowing that you're going to enjoy your retirement when it comes. So it's not like you're enjoying your life now and not in retirement. You can do both. You can enjoy your life now and also create a secure retirement you love. And that's why we're here. You're going to learn why there isn't just one retirement number you need to know, and specifically what is going to work for you. The biggest mistake people make when establishing their retirement needs and their plan, 5 factors that can determine your personal financial number, and then how guaranteed income really changes everything. I love guaranteed income when it's appropriate. I just love it because I've seen over and over again, the happiest people are the ones that know how much income they have, and they're not guessing if it's going to be there, and it's not subject to market volatility. It's not subject to what the stock market or the real estate market or the bond market is doing. The question every retiree should be answering before they stop working and before they retire. If you're within 10 years of retirement or you're already retired and you want a second opinion, are you doing things right? Should you change something about your retirement plan? I invite you to go to themillionaireinsider.com/5Q and answer 5 simple questions. Those questions are designed to really figure out where you are and, more importantly, what you need to do next. Again, themillionaireinsider.com/5Q. Now, once you answer that, that also will help you determine if you're ready to create a financial plan or a retirement plan, or if what you're doing has you on course to what you need to do. The key in all of it is really looking at what is your plan? Is it going to meet your needs? Are you paying too much in taxes? Do you have your bigger picture plan coordinated? You want to build the confidence that a plan creates. And that's what this questionnaire will allow you to do. So I encourage you to just take it. It takes less than 2 minutes, themillionaireinsider.com/5Q. This podcast is for educational purposes only. It is not intended to replace any advisor or specialist or to provide any investment, financial, tax, retirement planning, any advice. Always, always consult with a qualified professional. That would be a fiduciary who has your best interest at heart before you make any changes to your financial or personal situation. So let's dive in. So the first thing I want to dive into is the $1 million myth. So many people love to have a number. Like, as long as I have 1 million, I'm okay. One of my peers, like, I need 4 million. Now with what's going on economically, he's like, I'm afraid I'm going to need double that. And so the number changes, right? Because as we start having inflation, it becomes problematic. When we thought we were going to be okay on 4 million, and now we're like, well, beef has gone up 50%, produce has gone up 37%. It's a problem. Oil's up, housing's up, everything's up. A lot of times people want to know, do I need $1 million or 2 or 5? But that's not the problem. The problem is the fact that without the bigger picture, you don't know. And I'll give you an example. I have clients who have $700,000 in assets they've got a pension, they've got Social Security, they have very low debt, and they don't spend a lot, they're fine. As compared to somebody who has 3 million, who is spending $300,000 or $400,000 a year and has maxed out credit cards and is not really where they need to be financially. So the goal isn't the person that accumulates the most assets. The real goal is creating the reliable income you need based on what you are spending and what you need to create the life you want to create. I want you to start with your monthly income. The first question isn't how much do I need or how much do I have? It's what do I need for spending? Okay. That's where you got to begin. And you need to identify your needs and your wants. So your needs are more like housing, healthcare, insurance, basic food, taxes, things like that. Your wants are more like travel, entertainment, giving, unexpected expenses. Now, sometimes these lists get blurred. And let me give you an example. I look at people and they're like, they've got 17. That's the highest number. And it was one of my beneficiaries. I'm like, oh my God, 17 streaming services. Do you really need 17 streaming services? You may want 17 streaming services. It kind of leads you to believe, like, what are you doing with all your spare time? Because it's like, that's all they're doing is watching streaming services. The reality of it is no, they don't. And yet people think that is a need. A need is what you need to survive. Now, yeah, maybe you do need some form of entertainment. Maybe you need one or two, but 17, no. And that's where people get really confused. The reality of it is a streaming service is a want. And when it comes to your money plan, I want it in the want category. Now, let's talk about this. Most people know kind of like what they make, right? What their income is now. Not as many people know what they spend or know what is a need or what is a want. So you've got to separate those three numbers. Once you know what those expenses are, say, for instance, for your needs and or your wants, then you've got to figure out, okay, where's the income going to come from? Now, this is my opinion, and it's what I have seen over and over again in my almost 37 years. Next month, it'll be 37 years that I've been a financial advisor, which is just mind-boggling to me. But what I've seen over and over again is that when you have your need-based expenses covered with guaranteed income, people are happier. People have less stress. They have less anxiety. They enjoy their life more. They're not worried about money. They don't have that voice in the back of their head saying, am I going to have enough? Can I afford to spend this? What am I going to do? That, in my opinion, is absolutely critical. Now, the key here is you can have your want-based expenses coming out of non-guaranteed income, such as like dividend stocks or even real estate, or maybe even assets that are appreciating. Like you buy a stock at 10, it goes up to 20, you've got more money, so you've got that to spend. But this is the thing. You and your partner have to have the discipline when the market's not doing well to not spend. Now, this is what I find happens. Oh, of course we can. And yet, very rarely can they. Typically what happens is the person that's saying, of course we can, is the one in the relationship that could. The problem is the other person, the other partner, can't. Or what ends up happening is that's the plan. And then all of a sudden they have less income, the market goes down, now they can't afford it. And now the fighting starts. And then it's like, well, wait a minute, I didn't sign up for this. And now there's fighting. Sometimes there's marital discord. There's even divorces that occur because of this. So you've got to make sure that you're not just saying you have the discipline, both you and your partner, but you actually show that you do. And what I encourage you to do, try it for 6 months or a year and see, because it's not easy. It's very, very difficult. It requires a very, very strong discipline muscle that many people don't have. So you got to know that. Once you know that, and let's just say you say, okay, we can't do that, or we can't do all of it. Then what I encourage you to do is whatever number you have to have, maybe it's the fact that you're going to get into a divorce if your wife or husband doesn't have his streaming service or gaming service or whatever it may be. Then what you're going to do, instead of that just normal guaranteed income that you've got coming in every month, you're going to have that plus a little bit more. So let's say, for instance, you know that you have $5,000 a month at absolute bare bone minimum, but your ideal goal with your wants is $10,000. So you're like, okay, I don't need that much, All right, then maybe the need for guaranteed income is going to be 7,500. That gives you and your partner an extra 2,500 to spend if you have to really cut back. And especially, you don't want to get into the sequence of returns where you retire and then the market drops and you never can make it up. Having a drop in the market right after you retire can be devastating, something you can never make up. So you got to be really careful of that. What you can do then is you go to 7,500. Now you've got that $2,500 gap. As long as you're both on the same page and you've had that agreement up front, it's going to be less painful than if you go down to just the absolute bare bone needs. So hopefully that's clear. All right, the next thing is I want to dive into are the different factors that determine the retirement number. One of the things you got to be aware of is when are you going to retire? Because retiring at, say, 60 is very different than retiring at 70 or 75. Working even 1 or 2 more years can have a dramatic improvement on your retirement and how much money you need and how much money you have to spend. The goal is to save more, which retiring later allows, spend few of your assets, meaning your retirement monies or your personal monies, once you do retire, delaying taking money out, and then increasing the amount you get from Social Security because you're taking it later. Now, as I've shared with you, one of the phenomenons I've seen over the last literally probably 3 or 4 years is the number of people that are taking their Social Security earlier and intentionally. And it's kind of like it's on both sides of the aisle. Typically, you'd see one or the other, right? Like whoever's in office and they either are or aren't. But I've just seen it across the board. A large number of people, I think it may not be there. It's going to be reduced. We already know based on the current spending as of this recording, it was 2034. Now it's 2032. If Congress doesn't do something about it, what'll happen is Social Security is going to drop by 22%. That's going to be devastating for a lot of people. The thing I'm concerned about is they're not funding it. One of the things that you got to be aware of is immigrants, undocumented people, fund Social Security somewhere in the tune of about 100 million that they'll never get. All right, what are they going to do to make that up? Now, with the numbers that they're getting, it looks like they're trying to get like 600,000 immigrants a year deported. All right, well, I suppose there's like 20 million. So there's still going to be a number, right, if that doesn't continue. But at the same time, that is an impact on Social Security. So you just got to be aware of it. Good, bad, right, or wrong. It's something we got to understand. The second thing is like wages on tips and overtime. That funds Social Security. So there's just different things that you got to be aware of that are going to impact potentially your future. And you got to plan for that. If there's a drop in Social Security by 22%, you got to make that up some other way if you're planning on that money being there. One of the things that's really important to understand, when you do work a little longer, it can have a dramatic impact because you don't have as much risk of the sequence of returns because you've got extra time. So if the market drops, once you do retire, let's say you work another 5 years or 1 year or 3 years, and then the market drops, you have that 1 to 5 years of money that you've put in and that you've saved. And that's really important because then if the stock market drops, then you still have this other cushion. A lot of people don't realize how problematic the sequence of returns can be if you retire and then the market drops. The market has not really sustained a loss since George W. Bush and the whole Iraq mess. The market was down 38% in 2 of the years he was president. I didn't realize that. I mean, one of the retirement vehicles we use, which is the RILA, and I'll link to that in the show notes. One of the things about the RILA is they showed all the years when the market was below 30% because RILAs give you a protection on the downside. So it's like it'll give you 30% on the downside. And if the market drops 31, you lose 1%. That's in the whole year. 2, you lose 2, 3. There were 2 years under George W. Bush where the market was minus 38%. That's a lot. Since then, we've had some blips during COVID we've had some, so during Biden and then one, I think, during Trump, but it's blurb, but then it's come back. No one has experienced really a true bear market. And so the problem is that most people don't realize the market goes up and it goes down. And a prolonged period can be devastating for your retirement. Now, one of the things that I thought was interesting that I was reading before the last election is The best market performance has been when there is a Republican Congress and a Democratic president. And I thought that was just curious. What I would love to do is see those numbers, and then I'd love to see a Republican president and a Democratic Congress and see what happens there. But I thought that was just interesting. I mean, who knows moving forward what we're going to see. But I do think it's important to understand that we have not had a downturn in the market in some time. And a lot of people have just gone to sleep at the wheel. They don't realize that can happen because a lot of people aren't even old enough to remember what happens when the market really drops. But let's look at some different factors that really are going to impact. Number one, lifestyle. What do you plan to do in retirement? Are you going to travel? Are you going to buy a second home? I encourage you to listen to my episode on should I purchase a second home at themillionaireinsider.com/173. One of my friends who owns a second home, they're selling it. She said, it is so exhaustive. Like we had to try having three. She goes, I can't even imagine it. We're probably going to get rid of our third home. And we talk about it. And I don't know, we're going to go down there in September. Every time I'm there, I'm like, oh, I like being here. But I've only been down there 2 times in the last 3 years. It's a little further away and it's just a hassle. So I don't know. I don't know what we'll do. But the bottom line is you got to make that decision. And having a second home, a third home, whatever it is, complicates your life. So you got to think that through. But do you want to help your children or grandchildren? What about donating more? Maybe even starting a business or volunteering. Retirement isn't a one size fits all. The goal of retirement is for the retirement to really reflect your dreams, not somebody else's yours. And I think that's really important. And that's one thing like me and my husband, which we've had a lot of negotiations on. My husband is not quite into this whole work mode. Why are we working? It's for me, it's gotten so much more than about money. It's really about the lives I impact, not only my team members, but my clients. I'm looking at doing a merger where I'd merge with somebody so I'd have more support and ultimately then they'd take over. But it's got to be the right fit because the reality of it is very few firms do the type of planning I do. And even though I'm now doing more work where I'm doing like more one-off, like just retirement, I still want the ability where somebody can do that comprehensive planning because there are a lot of people who need it and want it. Kind of like acting like a personal CFO to people. That's what I've done my whole career. I'm really good at it. It's just a matter of most people don't want to do it because it's so time and labor intensive. Healthcare, that is one of your biggest unknowns. And it is the number one cause of bankruptcy. I personally cannot understand why we aren't all out in the streets screaming and demanding they fix healthcare. We're experiencing outrageous prices. There is no one that has a check and balance. We know there's corruption where these companies, people are like, oh, I don't want freeloaders. Well, what about these companies that intentionally inflate their bill? My husband, he gets his toenails clipped, which is covered on Medicare. And he looks at the bill and it should be like $50. It's like $600. And he's looking at it. He's like, what's this? I never even saw this guy. Oh, sorry, we made a mistake on your bill. So he followed up on it. Oh, yeah, we're working on it. But a lot of that goes on. There was a big case in Minnesota. There was even that, as big as that one was, there was double of that in Texas. The issue is no one's really doing anything about it. But the problem with that, other than it's completely morally and ethically wrong, is the fact that we all are paying for that. So we got to be aware of that. It's like when you start looking at the cost of procedures. I was talking with one of my neighbors up north. He has not had medical insurance, which I don't recommend, since 2006. And he basically just goes and negotiates. He had a broken arm and he paid $2,500. I tell you, my leg was broken, $71,000. Now, my sharing program got it down. But, I still had to come up with a total of $10,000 for all my other expenses and then out of pocket probably another $20 because I did a lot of alternative therapies. Most people can't afford that. So again, that's something to be aware of, but it's something that it is problematic and no one's really doing anything about it. And you just get to the point where you're like, I get it that different politicians say this, that, and the other thing, but unfortunately, no one is doing really what they need to do to fix it. And it's problematic for all of us because that is our biggest risk. You can't underestimate what is going to be the cost of Medicare. Many of us fall into IRMA where we get taxed, because if you make too much money, and I realize you're like, well, that's not a problem, but you're paying $1,000 a month It really cuts into how much you're getting on Social Security. You got to plan for that. What about prescription drugs? What about dental, vision, and even long-term care? A lot of these are expenses we cannot predict. You've got to have a plan for them because they're going to have or could have a dramatic impact on your future. All right, let's talk about inflation. That kind of silent stealer of our purchasing power. Even modest inflation means that the cost of living is going to double over time. Now, the problem with that is that what we have today, meaning the amount of money we have for retirement, is not going to be worth the same amount when we retire. Today's dollar is going to be worth more than tomorrow's because of inflation. The reality of it is, you hear, oh, the latest report was 4.2% inflation, which everyone's up in arms about. But what most people don't realize is they've taken all the big numbers out. Produce in 1 year is up 37%. Beef is up 50%. Now, because of the mess that's happening over in Iran and the Straits, it's almost at $100 a barrel. Housing is at an all-time high. All these expenses that are so much higher, it's like they take those out. That's how you get the 4.2. And then people are still up in arms about that. No, you need to be up in arms about the fact that produce is up 37%. Beef is up 50%. I mean, you can't sustain that. And that's something that I think a lot of people are missing. And it's going to dramatically impact the amount of money you need in retirement. All right, let's talk about longevity. The good news is we're living longer. The bad news is we're living longer, right? With all of the breakthroughs they've had with medical advancements, it's great, right? Because they say if you're going to get sick, now is the best time in history. Well, it's the best time in history unless you don't have enough money. Planning for 25 years of retirement is very different than planning for 40. And as people want to retire earlier, you need more money. I'd rather see people that have more money than they need than not as much. There's nothing fun about living broke in retirement. And yet there are so many people who are headed down that path. They say like 56%. Those are the ones that are like completely reliant on Social Security. And then there's like 22% that needs it and is vulnerable. That only leaves 22% of us that are okay. My friend, even if you're in the bucket with me where we're okay, who's going to be paying for all these other people? That's why I'm so against privatizing Social Security. For you and me that save and make good choices, yeah, it's great. For the majority of people who don't, they'll be spending that. And now they're going to be the ones that have no money and they're going to be on subsidies. So, it's something that you got to think through the big picture before you go make an individual choice. And that has been my biggest concern. All right, let's talk about guaranteed income. That changes everything. One of the biggest differences I've seen in my 36 years is that people with reliable monthly income worry less. They enjoy life more. They are enjoying what is happening. They're spending time with their loved ones, and they're not worried about where their money's coming from. So let's talk about where you get guaranteed income. I know this is debatable, but we hope Social Security, right? Even if it's going to be 22% less, or even if now they say it's going to probably be less, they're going to probably raise the age. Really what they should do is just those of us that make more money should have to pay on a higher limit. I don't love that idea, but really that would solve a big problem. Corporate pensions, which have pretty much phased out, but some people still are lucky enough to have one of those. A private pension where you fund like via an annuity, or other guaranteed income sources. But the main ones are Social Security, corporate pension, or an annuity, which is basically like a private pension. The power of knowing you have a monthly check every single month, in my opinion, is priceless. Why do you think people in that boat are so much happier? It's because they know their essential expenses are covered. And that peace of mind, that's what gives you security. You don't have to worry about that. The next thing is really creating a plan. And I'm not talking about guessing or winging it or hoping. I'm talking about actually sitting down and doing a plan. The issue is too many people rely on like rules of thumb. Well, it's kind of this or kind of that. But if you don't have a retirement plan, you really don't know. Some of the questions you need to be asking is, how much do you need every month? True need expenses and true want. And do you and your partner have the discipline to only spend the need-based? Most don't. Everyone will tell you they do. Very rarely do they. And then what happens when a major expense comes up? It's a problem. How much risk are you comfortable taking? How much risk is your partner comfortable taking? I rarely see two people that are in sync. One is more conservative, one's more aggressive. It's just how it works. And where's that income going to come from? What happens when your spouse dies and you lose one of the Social Security benefits? What happens if inflation continues to rise? What happens if you live to 100? They say that people that are, I think the year's like 2030. If you're 65 in 2030, there's 25% of people that are going to live to age 100. Ooh, my gosh. In some ways, that's so exciting. And in other ways, that's terrifying. But these are some of the questions that you've got to answer before you retire. Let's dive into 3 takeaways. Number 1, your retirement number is personal and it's also critical. Don't compare yourself to others. You got to look at where you are, what you're spending, what you need, and then go from there. You may be fine with $500,000 generating income because you spend less. You may need 5 million. The key is you got to look at that, right? You got to look at where that money's going to come from. The second thing is you got to focus on replacing your monthly paycheck with assets that are going to provide that predictable income, ideally guaranteed assets. And then you want a coordinated plan that helps answer one of life's biggest questions. Will I have enough money in retirement? Do I have a risk of running out of money? And you've got to know that before you quit working. Now, you can spend so much of your time worrying about it when if you just took the time to create a plan, you can really increase the odds that you're going to enjoy your life, not only now, but in the future. And you can stop worrying about money because there's always that little voice. When people don't have a plan, I have never seen a person, unless they're completely oblivious, not have that little voice of, are we going to be okay? Do we have enough money? The question isn't how much money should I have to retire? The question is really, how much am I spending? What are my need-based expenses, my want-based expenses? What do I think inflation is going to be? What about healthcare, taxes, longevity? And then you got to build a plan and reliable income around that so you have enough money. Retirement isn't about who has the most money or who gets this nest egg. There's people who have net worths of, say, 10 million that don't have the right income strategy, and it's problematic. I can remember saying to my husband, I want more guaranteed income. And he's like, that's dumb. We have so many assets, we don't need it. And then we bought our first annuity, $200,000 in 2018. And then he started looking at me, he's like, this is brilliant. I love this. Now he probably loves annuities more than me. I'm just kidding. But there's a place for them. You don't want to have all your money in there, but what you want to have is the amount of money you need to produce the guaranteed income. So if Social Security is not there or you don't have enough money to cover your needs, you've got it. Now, not everyone needs it. My sister's got a pension and she's got Social Security, so she really doesn't need it. But a lot of people do. So you got to be aware of that. The ultimate goal in all of this is having enough money to live a life you love with the confidence, the security, the freedom, and the clarity and the peace of mind. And if you can do that, my friend, you've got enough money, regardless of what that number is. If you're within 10 years of retirement, I really encourage you to answer our 5-question survey. You can go to themillionaireinsider.com/5Q. It's going to take you less than 5 minutes. And this quiz, this insight is really going to help you to review where you are and help you determine, do you have enough income? Do you have things coordinated? Are you on track to achieving your goal? So I really encourage you to take advantage of that, themillionaireinsider.com/5Q. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found this episode helpful. And if you did, please share it with a friend or family member who is preparing for retirement. We really appreciate it. So until our next episode, just take one action that you learned today that's going to move your needle forward, that's going to move you closer to creating a financially secure future and life you love. Oh, that's what it's all about. I'm Annette Ba'u. All international copyrights are reserved. Bye for now.